Welcome to Top Floor, the podcast where we amplify discussions with CEOs and chief executives driving the future of small and medium-sized businesses. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we delve into the unique minds and journeys of the executive leaders shaping tomorrow's business landscape. I'm your host, Dr. Krista Crawford. As a Vistage Chair, I coach leaders in advisory groups and in one-to-one executive sessions. I'm also an adjunct professor in the MBA programs. We help people make better decisions that lead to better businesses and lead better lives. My guest today is Claire Broido Johnson. She wears many hats. The co-founder, operating advisor, and board member of Sunrock Distributed Generation. Let's ascend to the top floor. Claire, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Krista, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
First of all, tell me, what is it that your company does? And then specifically, you wear many hats. How do you take care of all that wide brim hat?
Sure. So I have been in the climate tech space for about 25 years, and I have worn many hats. The industry is changing, ever changing, especially in the startup space. So at Sunrock Distributed Generation is headquartered in Baltimore and New York City. And what we do is we offer power purchase agreements for small and medium businesses, for entities that prior would not have been able to get financing to put solar on their roofs. So just to start from very basics, a power purchase agreement is the idea where a small and medium business wants solar on their roof, but doesn't want to pay for it and just wants to buy the electricity from the solar roof. So essentially what we do is we find the tax equity, we find the corporate equity, we find all of the capital that's needed. We invest and own a solar power plant on a small, medium business roof. And then we sell the electricity from that roof to you, the small, medium business, for a period of 20 plus years at a fixed rate, which is typically far below what the utility rate is. So as a small business, what you end up being able to get is you get solar on your roof, you get a cheaper electricity rate that's fixed for a long period of time, and you can meet your sustainability goals while reducing your operating expenses and confirming and standardizing your operating expenses over the long term.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding this from a layman terms, you're offering me the ability to be a participant in sustainability.
Correct.
And save some money along the way.
Absolutely right.
Fantastic. I'm going to just take a leap of faith here and think that you're in a high technology industry. As you were coming along your career path, how many women were in this industry along the way? And did you have any particular ones that helped you, grow your business and grow your skill set?
Sure. For many, many years, I was the only woman in the room. I am an environmental scientist by background and have an MBA. And so when I started my first company, Sun Edison, which was back in 2003, I was the only C-level person who was female. Thank goodness life is changing. And if you look at Sunrock DG's company, we are more than half female, which is a wonderful thing, and trying to grow that exponentially. It's been a long road. There are lots of implicit biases. There's lots of things we could discuss for a very long time. But the fact of the matter is more women are getting MBAs, more women are getting technology degrees. And it's taken decades and decades of women supporting other women to try to get them to C-level positions. And that's something that I pride myself on. I'm constantly supporting women in the industry at all levels of their career, whether it's creating connections, helping them with their resumes, supporting them in whatever ways I can. I'm mentoring 10 people right now as an example, and that's typical. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do to make sure there are more women in the industry.
Wearing many hats, mentoring 10 people, and being successful at that. Do you have any tips or tricks for people in terms of time management? How do you stay organized? What are your tips? Yeah.
Well, so I'm in an interesting position right now. So I have bopped around from company to company, and I don't necessarily suggest that for young people, but C-level folks at different companies, it's easier to figure out early that it's not a good fit or it is a good fit. And I'm certainly hoping that Sunrock is a good fit for the long term. I founded the company with a few other people in mid 2022. It's not completely dissimilar to what we did at SunEdison, which was providing PPAs to companies. There's a couple differentiators that make Sunrock really interesting. I'm not answering your question, but I promise I'll get to it.
I have faith that you will.
So the differentiators are that we have a credit underwriting mechanism that allows companies who previously were unable to get financing for solar to get financing for solar. And two, we have a stable of 400 contractors with whom we're working. So we are really more of an indirect channel business than a direct. And I fundamentally think that solar is a hyper-local business at the end of the day, in the sense that if you're a small REIT, if you're a small industry, you want to work with someone you know and someone local, and that's what we're doing. We're offering national financing by working with contractors and EPCs all over the country. So to answer your question, I think, and it's relevant because I think I have gone to a lot of different things in my career. So I started with solar. Prior to that, I worked with utilities, and then I moved over to energy efficiency, and I went back to solar for a bit, and then I worked with electric vehicles for a while. I think in terms of time management, the issue is you see these patterns that emerge. It's patterns with humans, it's patterns with organizations, it's patterns with what you're selling, it's patterns with operations. And so some of it is, it seems like I'm doing a lot of things, and I am, but I'm also getting better at managing my time because I've seen it before. So there's just, as you age, that one of the good things is you can go back and say, oh, when I was working at X company, this was an issue also, and this is how I solved it. And so I think time management is really, I've gotten better with age, in the sense that I use time boxing as an example. There's a great Harvard Business Review article about it, but it's basically saying, okay, I think, it's going to take me 10 hours to finish this task. And I literally put in my calendars, and I have 3 colors on my calendar at any point in time. One is for my family, one is for my consulting business, and one is for Sunrock Distributed Generation. And I'm constantly reevaluating how much time things take. I'm taking everything that I've learned in my past to try to be as efficient as possible. And I'm also getting better at saying no to things. As a young person, it's really important to try to take all of the opportunities you can, but I'm getting better at learning how to say no.
I think we yes people tend to find one another. And instead of saying aging, I like to say seasoning. So as I've seasoned,
Okay.
I have had to practice saying no.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and we get better at it. We learn how to say no with grace and offer alternatives to it. I
Yeah.
can't do this right now, but here's someone I suggest.
Right.
And I'll be happy to do an introduction for you. But learning that skill of gracefully saying no with kindness, it takes time, and it takes self-confidence.
It takes some self-confidence, and it takes some understanding of your capabilities and your skill sets, right? And so being able to really hone in on what you want and what you need, and then what you can offer, seems basic, but it's really hard to find. Yeah.
At what point in your life, early or later, did you decide that that science was where you were headed, that science and technology is where
Yeah.
you wanted to be?
So I'm actually not a technologist. I'm an environmental scientist, but I have been really interested in environmental science at a very, very young age. I'm back to 3rd grade in my science experiments on acid rain and its effects on a water environment. So I've always known that I wanted to do something in science, but I am not an engineer. I'm not a technologist. And I've really gravitated towards operations of companies, operations and strategy and business development and growth, scaling of startups. That has become my sweet spot over my career. So I would not say I'm a technologist, to be perfectly honest. I hire people who can help, but frankly, the businesses that I have been involved in have been more financing, sort of financial structuring of enabling renewable energy or energy efficiency. for electric vehicles over time.
Thank you. Because my background is in the softer sciences of business, and we do tend to lump them together, science and technology.
Yeah.
And they are obviously different skill sets. So I appreciate that. That was good.
Yeah.
Thinking in your career, what are the biggest learnings about business and in life that
Goodness.
bubble up to the top? Yeah, take a moment.
Yeah.
There's a
No, so one of the things I'm really enjoying right now is Frances Fry, who is a professor at Harvard Business School, wrote a book called Unleashed, and she has a new one out as well. But I love the concept of trust. She has something called a trust triangle. And if you think of a triangle, you think about authenticity, you think about logic, and you think about empathy. And it's worth looking her up. I would do a disservice to talk too much about her now, but the idea of really figuring out how to trust the people you work with and have them trust you, and trusting and respecting each other is something that is so important in a business. And I do think the soft skills are underrepresented. I think, as people go across their career, they say, I want to be a project finance, engineer, or an engineer, or I want to do mechanical engineering, or I want to do, journalism or something. Of course, right? That, I am a climate tech entrepreneur. That's really important. But as important is the people that I work with, and do I trust them and respect them, and do they trust me and respect me? And that's really hard. And as you increase your level over your career, it gets harder and harder. And there's a lot of egos, and there's a lot of, growth that needs to happen throughout your career to figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, how you can support other people. I love managing people, as an example, and I love delegating to people, and I love empowering people. And that's something a lot of people don't like to do. And so it's really figuring out where you can shine and be as successful as possible. So, one of the things I also really, I suggest to a lot of people to whom I'm giving advice is putting together something called a career ingredients list, which I got from a wonderful woman named Michelle Antonio. And it's basically force ranking the things you really, really, really need in a job. And you could look up career ingredients as well. I can send some links to you as well. But it's the idea of sort of what is the most important in your business and personal life. So for me, for an example, I need it to be in the climate change space. I need to be doing something in the climate change space. I need it to be on the East Coast because I have little kids and it's important to be near them. I need to be working with people I really trust and respect, who really trust and respect me. I work better in environments where communication is super duper clear. I'm not very good with politics. I don't like politics. I don't like undermining. I really like straight shooters. And I personally like to have a lot of autonomy and authority to be able to make big decisions. And so that's been, everyone has their own thing, right? So that's something that's important to me. Everyone has their own requirements, but I think, that's something that I've been advising a lot of people to do more recently, is thinking through your career ingredients and then force ranking them and, explaining why. Do you really need that title, or do you need something about that title? Do you really need it to be 100% virtual, or is there something about it? So it's really questioning yourself on a very integral basis. Yeah.
I love that. With a background in HR, guiding people to finding the right career path and the right tone. It sounds very similar to, once you're in a job, we have this technique called job crafting, where you identify the things that give you the most joy, because we find that you can be the most efficient and more effective if you're really loving what you do. There's an author, Marcus Buckingham, and his latest book is called Love Plus Work. And it underscores how important that aspect. We're not supposed to talk about love at work, right?
Right.
But that he brings it forward. He's a market researcher. And it's wonderful. So I've been asking that question to everyone. I'm going to ask it to you. You've given me a nice segue. What is it that you love about your work? What do you love about it?
I love scaling up organizations and making them successful. I really do. And that's not just one thing, right? It's operations. It's creating the right checklists. It's creating the right process flows. It's having the right Gantt charts. but it's very strategic also. So, there's companies I've worked with where the CEO is a visionary, which is a wonderful thing, but really doesn't understand how to execute and or hasn't figured out how to focus, right? And so I love creating focus, creating drive, creating purpose, strategically, and then operationally figuring out how to scale. And that's it's hard, and it's taken me many iterations. I have jumped around maybe more than I should have. I don't know, but I think being very honest with yourself and very honest with the people that you work with is a critical thing. And that's what I love to do the most. I love delegating to people. I love empowering people to be successful. And I think if there is this, thought process of trust and this feeling of trust, you can create wonderful things with organizations.
You mentioned trust a lot, and it is so important. It's something that's so hard to gain and easy
Yeah.
to lose.
Yep.
So I was thinking about that. If I were to talk to one of your employees, how would they describe your leadership style? How do you think they would describe your style?
I am very authentic, sometimes too authentic. What you see is what you get. And that means sometimes not as polished as it needs to be, which has, certainly gotten me in trouble over my career, and has been something I've had to learn over the years. I'm very, sort of honest and raw, and I'm a very open communicator. So I am a person who really loves to share where we are, where we're going. And it's really interesting. A lot of CEOs just don't like that. They like having one-on-one conversations, or they like to hold information, and that is a sign of power for them. That's not how I like to work. I'm a sharer, and I think people would say that I'm honest, I'm forthright, I care about other humans, I care about them personally and professionally, and I try to be very focused on making companies successful.
You seem to have a great grasp of your value system. Authenticity, trust, the ability to delegate. I find that seems to be a skill that a lot of CEOs have trouble with,
Yep.
particularly when you're growing your own organization.
Yep.
Any tips or tricks that you've learned to learn how to effectively delegate?
Sure. I think the reason CEOs, I mean, you can't make a broad brush generalization of all CEOs, but I think many CEOs have a problem delegating because they honestly think that they're better at everything than anybody else is. And, I think that comes with the territory. If you are a founder, and let's split up founder CEOs from CEOs who have come in to take over organizations. If you're a founder CEO, you've created the company, it's your baby, and you think you know more than anyone else does. And that's entirely possibly true. But until we learn how to clone ourselves, it's impossible to do everything. And so how do you figure out how to delegate? Well, you hire people you really trust and respect. And that's a different, and you hire people who are better than you are at whatever it is you want them to do. No one's good at everything. I'm not a good marketing person. I know what is good marketing, but I am never going to design a website that's going to look nearly as good. And so I always know to hire, there's a woman who I've worked with for a long time, and lots of other people who can make things look beautiful. And what takes her 15 minutes would take me 4 hours, right? And so, trying to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are, figuring out how to let go the reins a little bit, because I mean, really, there's not any other option. There's, you clone yourself or you figure out how to delegate. And and if you don't do either of those things, you can't scale. It's quite literally impossible to scale until you learn how to delegate. And so hire the best people you can, who you trust and respect. Try to hire people who are better than you, and check your ego at the door a little bit.
Ego. Yes, you need a strong ego to start a company, or if you're brought in as a CEO, you need to
Yeah,
feel confident in yourself.
of course.
But obviously, our biggest strengths can become our weaknesses as well, and letting that ego go enough to empower other people to
Yep.
do their work.
Yep.
We find that micromanaging also can be a challenge for leaders as they're transitioning from their baby to a teenager or to a full-fledged adult. So any tips that you can offer to avoid being a micromanager or to know that that's happening? Any thoughts?
I think having a mentor, which may be in or out of your company, is really important because I think all of us get to the point where we feel like, oh my gosh, this just has to get done and I just have to do it and I can do it perfectly and no one else can. I think most competent CEOs get in that rut at some point. It's not necessarily a rut. It's like, I need to get this done. I don't even want to train somebody to figure out how to do it. But I think, and I think sometimes that you just need to barrel through and get things done. But if you really want to scale, micromanaging is the opposite of scaling, right?
Yes,
It's
right.
just if you want to scale, you have to learn how to empower other people and you have to learn how to delegate until you learn how to clone yourself. And it's just, there's, I mean, it's shocking how much people micromanage other people, really. But it is letting go of the reins, and that's a really hard thing to do. So I'm not dismissing the tension, but take it to the extreme. It is quite, if micromanaging other people, especially if they're at high levels in their careers, never does anyone a service, right? I mean, it really doesn't. And even if you think you're right, sometimes you might not be, you know? Maybe 90% of the time you are, but those 10%, you really need to understand those kernels. And it's very easy as a CEO. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. You sort of get, blind, so focused that it's hard to lift up and say, wow, maybe I'm not thinking about this the right way. And so finding a mentor is something, and again, it might be your best friend. It might be somebody else, somebody that you can really, doesn't necessarily have to be someone at work, but someone who can see how you're micromanaging, I think is really, really important, which requires a certain level of, emotional intelligence as well.
Absolutely. We have a phrase that we use that you have to set aside the time and space to think when you're talking
Yeah.
about having those blinders on. And a mentor can help that because it's a designated time and space for just that, to talk about things. But I love your time block approach. I
Yeah.
always encourage people to block some thinking time.
Right.
And they're like, what? Like, no, and make it sacred, make it a sacred space for you to sort of think about and to plan those pieces, those things back of mind. And part of that is
Exactly.
that delegation. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is all really good stuff. So if you could go back to your teenage self,
Mhm.
you pick an age. I'm not going to give you an age, but what advice would you give Claire, knowing what you know now?
um, I think I would try to suggest that she be a little more self-confident and a little less defensive. Um, many young women in sciences are self-loathing and, and have been so for so many reasons. We could have hours and hours of conversations, but, um, I think trying to trust in yourself is really important as well. And I think because I have been in such harsh environments with work, I right after college, I went to investment banking, oil and gas, M&A consulting, and I was the only female on the floor. And it was very hard that you end up becoming very defensive. And I think that's something I'm learning every day, to be honest, is to become less defensive and to listen better and, slow down as much as I can. I'm very much a get it done person, as are, so many people in the startup space. And slowing down and listening and being less defensive and being more self-confident are things that I think would be great for most people.
Wonderful. All right. We've talked about a lot of things, including you've given a book recommendation. That's wonderful. I
Yeah.
actually have Unleashed on my bookcase here, but I haven't read it yet. So
So
now
do
you've
I.
prompted me to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked you? If there's anything I've left, that you would like to share? Anything
So
you'd
it's
like to
ended
talk
up
about?
being more of an HR conversation than about a business conversation, which is fine. But I'd like to get back to Sunrock briefly and talk
Please.
about the fact, yeah. So, I mean, we are looking for um, private universities, nonprofits, businesses of all sizes who are interested in contemplating solar and would love to hear from you, would love to hear from the EPCs that are around you to figure out how we can support solar on your rooftops. We typically do behind the meter solar. We do 50 kilowatts to 5 megawatts. We are, a differentiator in that we can offer financing to people who previously have not been able to receive financing because they don't have a credit rating, and we have a way to help support that. And I think, there are billions and billions of square feet of roof space that haven't been addressed by solar, and that is something that's really going to have to change. Solar is cost competitive in over 30 states now. It's something I've personally been working on for over 20 years, and it just makes sense. So, please, reach out to us, and we would welcome the opportunity to offer financing to you and co-develop with your EPCs. We are a one-stop shop, sort of solar in a box, and would be happy to talk with anybody about how to improve their sustainability via solar and more.
And what's the best way that they can get in touch with you, Claire?
They can come to our website, sunrockdg.com.
Fantastic. I'll make sure to put that in the comment section as well. You're right. We ended up talking about HR more than your business because you were just offering so many pieces of wisdom, and I wanted to continue to pick your brain. I'm going to give you one more chance. What makes your organization different than other organizations in your vertical? What separates out your organization?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm actually working on the marketing for our company right now. And if you look at any solar company, they all say exactly the same thing. So, I mean, our differentiator is that we offer financing to smaller businesses. So solar historically has either been very small residential or large commercial utility. We're offering financing and co-development for the billions of square feet in between that. And that is a big differentiator, and we're operationally very efficient. So we can provide pricing quickly and support your EPCs as we're providing financing and construction management and asset management and all of the other wonderful things that go along with that.
And with that, I think we can close this episode. This has been Top Floor. My guest has been Claire Broido Johnson, and she has offered many pieces of wisdom. The one big takeaway for today that I heard is trust, establishing it and keeping it. I thank you so much, Claire. And I will be reaching out. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.